welcome back to Eggs the Podcast. But before we get started, I want to talk to you about our sponsor, Taylor Style. January always feels like a quiet reset. The holidays are over, the inbox is full again, and suddenly you're back in meetings, travel, routines, real life. And what I've noticed is that when things speed back up, the little decisions start piling on. What am I wearing today? Do I need something more polished for this meeting? Do I even have time to think about this? That's honestly where Taylor Style has become such an integral part of my day. For me, it's not about fashion, it's about removing friction so that you can focus on the work, the conversations, and the momentum you're trying to build this year. I'm a subscriber right now, and every few weeks I get a box with hand-picked outfits chosen by a real stylist, refined by their AI, and the crazy part is they actually nail it most of the time. Stuff I would never go buy, but I end up wearing nonstop just because it works. And that's why Taylor works so well for me right now. I don't have to shop, plan outfits, do laundry, dry cleaning, anything. Taylor Style, paired with their AI and real human stylists, sends you clothes each week that actually fit your life. Work days, travel, dinners, whatever you've got going on. If this year is about getting back into a rhythm and showing up a little more dialed in without adding more to your plate, Taylor is worth checking out. Eggs listeners get 25% off their first month with code EGGS at taylor.style. And that's Taylor, Taylor.style for 25% off with code EGGS. Now, back to the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Eggs, the podcast. Today's special guest is AJ Mizes, the founder and CEO at The Human Reach. AJ, how are you, man?
I'm doing well, Ryan. Thanks for having me. Hey, Mike, too.
Thank you so much for making time for us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Do you want to give us a brief overview of who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. So I am the founder and CEO of The Human Reach, which is a human potential institute based in California. We're based in San Francisco, although we have 30 teammates all over the world. And our prime mission is to help get people from being stuck and frustrated to thriving and hired and growing in their roles. So we mainly work with directors, VPs, and above to help them discover what they want to do, why they want to do it, and then ultimately go out and put a plan together on how to get it. And my background is in HR and recruiting. So I've been working in HR and recruiting for about 20 years. Most recently, I was at Facebook for the last 6. I stopped working there in 2023, although The Human Reach was founded in 2020. So we've been at this for about 4 years. I work with thousands of clients, and we're a pretty massive team now, which is really fun.
That's awesome. That's really cool to see it go from, just you to thousands of people, and it's neat to see something like that grow. Can you, everyone, you hear Facebook and you're like, oh my goodness, you want to tell us a little bit about working with them and, the company culture and then your decision to leave? That's kind of a job most people are fighting to get. And then, for you to go off on your own and leave a company like that, that says something.
Talk about a mind F.
Yeah, right.
That definitely was. And I loved working at Facebook / Meta, what they're known for now. But I was there for 6 years. It's a really amazing place. And it was amazing for a couple of reasons. One was because of the people, and you hear that a lot from folks, but they were honestly, the folks at Facebook were the smartest people I had ever worked with in my career. And I think it enabled me to learn how to run a really great business, how to lead the right way, how to set goals and hold a high bar, and how to hire really smart, talented people, and maintaining that high bar. So in addition to that, I was the HR director for a group within the augmented reality, virtual reality space. And so we had about 10,000, 15,000 people in that arena. So I had a huge HR team. And the other kind of reaction that I get is, oh, HR, what were you doing? and HR is the bad guy or bad lady. And the cool thing with Facebook is that HR folks were not there to push paper, make sure people were doing their W-9s and W-2s and, firing people. The way in which Facebook designed the HR role is to be a coach to leaders and to people in that underneath those leaders. And so my primary goal was to coach leaders to be better, and every HR VP at Facebook, how to hold everybody to a really high bar, how to motivate, how to design and grow teams. It was very, very strategic, almost like a consultant. And that kind of turned the page, because before Facebook, I had been used to maybe traditional HR. And so I really think that they're on the cutting edge. But to go to the story of like why I left Facebook. So I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My grandfather and my dad were all CEOs or presidents or founders of companies. So kind of in the DNA, I suppose. But the story that I tell is that when I was 22 years old, I was sat down by a CEO of a company I was working for, Sarah Menke, shout out if you're watching. And she asked me like, hey, what do you want to do in your career? Like after you work at Premiere, like what's your goal? And I thought that was such like an astute question to ask. And also I was kind of like taken aback because I was like, why is the CEO talking to me about what I'm going to do afterwards? But the answer that I gave her was I wanted to start a company that was going to help people. And I didn't know what I was going to do, but it's some sort of product. I wanted to run my own company one day. And she has supported me ever since. That was back in like 2011. And so, you know, I was, this is in 2020, I was kind of sitting on my couch. I was thinking about like, I'd been at Facebook at that point for about 3 years. And I was thinking like, hey, how do I want to contribute to the world? What are people coming to me for? And they were coming to for career advice, for executive coaching, leadership coaching, HR consulting, et cetera. And I was thinking about regret. And if I was sitting at a bar at a restaurant and some young kid came up to me and was like, hey, AJ, what's one big thing that you regret in your life? I would have said not starting my own company. And so I had to work through a lot of fear. I had to work through a lot of angst and to leave that because it was a cush job, right? Golden handcuffs, like name brand company, very hard to get into, but ultimately regret or the fear of regret was the thing that motivated me to go out and do this thing.
That's a really interesting observation. I mean, I think that that's something that a lot of people fight with, you know, and it's interesting about the time that your business came in and through COVID and all that stuff. It seems like there were a lot of people in that kind of window there, especially like during shutdowns and things like that, where people did start to maybe think this way a little bit, which was, you know, they'd had a career all these years, but like now all of a sudden I've got some time to myself and, you know, maybe I'm not happy doing what I'm doing. And, you know, so you notice that there was sort of a trend of people, you know, starting businesses or changing careers or doing different things. You know, some people are just chasing benefits, you know, maybe they wanted remote work or whatever, you know, different things like that. But people definitely started to, I think, take a little bit more of an inventory of how they were feeling about where they were working and things like that. And prior to that time, well, and maybe no other way to get to that. Like, I don't know if people would have really had such a monumental shift in their mindset. So I think that that's a really interesting observation. One of the other things I wanted to, oh, sorry, Mike, go ahead.
I was going to ask, you know, it sounds like there was a kind of an overlap there before you left Facebook and when you had a few years where you're already kind of doing the coaching thing. Was that by design or was there something that you hit a goal where you're like, okay, I've got enough of a income stream coming from here that I can leave comfortably?
Such a great question. I think so. That's the long story, or the short story is that I was overlapped, but the longer story is that I actually left Facebook in 2020 to start the Human Reach. I was doing it full time for about 9 months, and prior to leaving Facebook, I kind of made a decision in my head, and I talked with my partner to say like, hey, what do we need to see from an income perspective to like give us an insurance net, you know, something to jump into, so that I can leave Facebook full time and really pursue this. And so we came up with a number. And then that was my pursuit of like, how can I go get X amount of dollars in consulting contracts or coaching engagements for what period of time? I got it in 30 days from setting that number, which was like, I think key for me because I needed something to go after and target. And then some of it was serendipitous. Some of it, you know, you put stuff out in the universe and it comes back to you. And so I got that number. I was full-time in Human Reach for 9 months, and then Facebook, ring, gave me a call, and they were like, AJ, we want you to come back and lead a team, ARVR, the one that I joined in the last stint. And we want you to build this team. It's blah, 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 blah. And so I was at a crossroads, and I was like, okay, do I keep doing Human Reach or do I go back to Facebook? And I, said, hey, I have a company that I've started. It's doing pretty well and I can see the momentum building. Would you let me run it on the side while I'm at Facebook? And they said, we don't give a crap. You can run your company. We don't care. So I went back, and I went back for about 2 years. grew the ARVR HR squad, and then was simultaneously still running human reach. And then in January of 2023, I had had enough. I had kind of soaked up as much as I could from that company, and things were really starting to take off at human reach. And so I left for a second time.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. And it's actually an interesting perspective too, because like, I mean, even going into my own business, there were a lot of years that I thought about starting my business, and then basically it took a layoff to kind of nudge me out the door, right? I was never, in my situation, I wasn't quite brave enough to take the step. And if I hadn't been sort of shoved out the door, I wouldn't have realized, oh, this is actually better. Like, this is a better place to have been.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people, you know, in trying to conquer their own fear, I think you did it in a very smart way, which is, you know, set some milestones in terms of financial metrics so that you don't have to feel that squeeze, you know. And I also, and maybe we can dive into a little bit, this notion of setting goals and chasing and trying to, you know, achieve goals. I think just strictly by having a number to chase, you know, that probably puts you in a better position to achieve it than, you mentioned earlier that your business goal was to start a business that helped people. Well, okay, well, that could be anything, right? So it's a pretty ambiguous goal. But I need to make X number of dollars per month in order for us to be happy, or we need to have X number of dollars into, you know, in savings or something to float me for, you know, a few months. Those kind of metrics, I think, are things that people can actually work towards and achieve. And I think just by bracketing that, you know, and saying that this is the goal, it makes it infinitely easier to achieve, I think.
Yes, 1000%. And it's so funny that you mentioned that thing about like the genesis that gets you up to go do the thing. And in this case, start a business. And like when your back's up against a wall, sometimes that forces us to like look at all of our options and do the thing that we want to do. But what I've found, and maybe that Ryan, this was true for you, is that like that maybe that regret piece came in, or like, hey, I think I would really be like, I want to figure this out. Like I want to see if I can start a company and run a business. And I think what gets in the way, especially like with people that we work with, is like that fear factor of like the conversation between your amygdala and your cortex and your brain, like the thing that keeps you from doing something that your brain perceives is going to kill you. And so I had to personally work through that a ton, especially in the first like 12 months of running the company. Like there's scary stuff that happens, and you're used to in a W-2 role, like getting a paycheck every 2 weeks is the same amount, and getting your benefits covered and getting all the things right. And in your own business, your income goes like this. And so you have to get used to that. And it takes, at least for me, it took me 6 to 12 months to really get used to that. And I wouldn't be on this side now, like very, very comfortable with it, had I not just gone through and take the first step. So,
yeah, no, I think that's great advice.
Let's talk about the first year of the human reach, like figuring out, you know, this is what I want to do, then acquiring clients, and then growing the business.
Yeah. So the first year I was offering 3 products, because maybe Ryan and Mike, you can relate to this, but I was offering like a bunch of different things. So it's like, who's going to buy? Who's going to take? Who's going to take?
I have to have one that's affordable. I have to have one that's not.
Exactly. And like, so I was offering HR consulting, executive coaching, and career coaching. I kind of wanted to spread a very large, you know, cast a wide net so that I was seeing kind of what would hit. I got immediately like 2 or 3 HR consulting clients. I got like 2 or 3 executive coaching, and then several career coaching. So it didn't really help me figure out like, okay, I know there's a demand for all 3 of these things. So then it was like, okay, what do I enjoy doing the most? I know there's a demand for all of this, but like, where do I find the most joy? And while I'm definitely a subject matter expert in HR consulting, it was like super boring. And I was working with not all of the CEOs, but I was working with some CEOs who just didn't really get the people stuff. And so that was really frustrating, because I would parachute in, I would like try to coach and like talk about, you know, how we need to design HR stuff. And, you know, it was kind of a tug of war. So I was like, okay, I don't think I want to do HR consulting anymore. And then I was just exec and career coaching. And once I focused on those 2 areas, it just like blew up. And it was me and one other coach and an admin at the time. And then over, you know, the last 3 years, career coaching in our program, Career Amp, has been just like growing like gangbusters, which has fueled all the growth at our company.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. Well, so I wonder, one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and maybe it kind of pertains to goal setting a little bit, but also just sort of in your own business and in your own life and stepping out and becoming an entrepreneur. but then also in like the way that you're coaching people through executive career paths or things like that is I think, especially nowadays, maybe more than ever, but I don't know. It seems that we spend a lot of time chasing dreams that aren't necessarily our own. And so, we catch stuff on social media, we see what our friends are up to, we, look up to different people or whatever it is. And it seems that a lot of times we end up grafting those dreams or those ideas or those thoughts or those paths onto our own. Yeah. And so I wonder if you have any insights just in like working with the people you work with or in your own experience in sort of setting goals or being able to, I guess, I don't know, talk to yourself and figure out what it is what you actually want. Because I think that there's so many people, especially, like you mentioned, I mean, you worked at Facebook, right? A lot of people go, oh my God, what a place to work at, so it's like, oh, I want to work at Facebook too. But do you really? Like, do I want to work at Facebook, or is it just because AJ works there and I think it's cool? It's like, so a lot of times we end up just kind of grabbing those things and they're not going to be fulfilling. They're not going to be satisfying. It's not even really what we want, but we're just doing it because we think it's the thing. Yeah. And so I wonder if you have any insights on sort of navigating that and sort of, I guess, finding ourselves.
Yeah, that's such a great point, Ryan. And a recent LinkedIn study actually showed that 3 out of 4 people feel stuck in their career. So think about it. That's 75% of people out there. 3 out of every 4 people that feel stuck. So it's a pandemic. It's like an epidemic that's tackling or going across the United States right now. And a big factor is what you just hit on, which is people following careers that their parents told them that they should do, that their culture, sometimes religion, or their friends, and they climb a ladder just because their friend is moving in a certain direction. So we have like doctors and lawyers who come to us and we're like, I don't want to be a doctor anymore. And they're like practicing physicians and they're like, get me out. Like, I can't do this anymore. I did this because my parents wanted, sons and daughters that were going to be doctors and lawyers. So it's a big thing. So what we do is a lot of times what folks try to do is they just try to, especially if it's like a slight right turn to what they were doing instead of like a hard pivot, like a doctor to a marketer or something. But the first thing that we do or that they do sometimes is just go start applying for things and like fix their resume and like go cast a really wide net. And what's happening in the market right now, and has always been true, but I'd say is definitely more so now, is companies are hiring specialists and not generalists. And so you really have to think about what you want to do, why you want to do it, and how you have some proof in the pudding to show that you can. And so the way in which we do that, even before starting on your resume or your LinkedIn or stuff like that, is we have folks go through a series of exercises to really understand like what brings them joy, like the activities that they're doing. Even if they're a doctor and trying to pivot to a marketer, like what are you doing day to day that you love as a doctor, and what are the things that you don't like doing? I'm just using this as an example. Then we have them go back even further and we start talking about like, okay, what did you love doing as a kid? What was something that fascinated you or that you found yourself drawn to or you lost track of time as a kid? Then we have them take an assessment. And then we marry all those things together to really understand the patterns and themes that exist between all 3 of those things so that we're finding a direction. We're not just saying, oh, I can do marketing and I can do sales and I can do customer success or, whatever it is. We're picking one based on all of those things. We're coming up with a rubric of what a good role would look like, what needs to be there at the company, with your manager, with the team that you would be working on, all of those things. So then we can go talk about branding, resume, LinkedIn, cover letter. Then we can start to generate stories about how to talk about yourself, and then we proceed forward from there.
I like that. I think it's a lot of people are, I'm a jack of all trades. I can do everything. I'm a generalist. I can build a website and I can design it and I can do the front end and I can do the back end and I can, and really what you're doing is you're just muddying the waters. But if you can specialize and hone in on one specific area, it kind of opens more doors for you, and people will start reaching out to you to try and get the services specifically. Like, I specialize in SEO, I specialize in this, and they know that you're good at that, and then they come after you for that. I've been guilty of being the jack of all trades. I do a little bit of everything, and I know I'm guilty of that, and mainly it's because I like doing all those things. And so it's kind of it's not necessarily a problem for me. I specialize in one specific thing, but I do other things just for fun. And so it's not necessarily a problem for me, but there are people that, when they're so general and so broad, it's hard to kind of narrow down what they're really good at and what they really enjoy doing
Right.
versus they can do it. And I listened to a podcast that you were on earlier, where you were talking about people who they do stuff and they get known and they're good at it, but they don't enjoy doing it. So then they end up building this career and this job that they don't enjoy doing, but they do it because they're known and they're good for it. You can maybe talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So I love talking about the 70-30 rule. So the American Psychological Society ran a study almost 2 decades ago, which really talked about looking at people's day-to-day, what they were doing day-to-day, and the task, and if they enjoyed it or not, and their fulfillment from their role. And what the study found was that people who are working 70% of the time in things that they enjoy and are good at are way more likely to be fulfilled in their roles. So then the question is, what does the 30 represent? So the 30% are the things that we have to do that just come with our job. So the example that I give is like, as CEO, I have to, look at finances. I have to be kind of, accounting. I have to understand the money part and run pivot tables and all that jazz. Do I like doing that stuff? Absolutely not. But is it something that I have to do? Yes. And so then you look at the 70, the other stuff that I'm doing in my role, which is growing a team, setting up processes, understanding growth goals, setting vision. Like, I love that stuff. And so when I talk to people, and I talk about, you need to find something that's fulfilling. It's not like 100% of the job needs to be fulfilling, because that's just like, if you find something that's that way, let me know. Because we'll go make a lot of money together, but and be really, really happy. So I try to also talk about like, what's your 70? And what do you want to be doing 70% of the time, up to 70% or even more, so that you're optimizing for fulfillment.
Yeah, no, I think that's really smart. And I'd like to maybe stay in this area a minute longer and just talk about sort of, choosing our specialties. So, you mentioned that companies are looking for specialists more than they're looking for generalists nowadays. And I think that's probably true. I'm seeing that in my experience anyway. But as you encounter people who are trying to make these sort of bigger career pivots, maybe not doctor to marketer, but, I don't know, product designer to product manager. I don't know,
Sure.
Let's say, so it's kind of in the same realm, but, maybe they don't like doing this, but they'd rather be doing that. So, but they don't have any work experience doing that. They don't have their, formal education maybe isn't in that, they don't necessarily have the chops to be a specialist yet. How do you work with people who are like committed that this is the path I want to go?
Yeah.
I mean, do you help them formulate a plan? Like, does it go back to school? Like, I mean, do you actually work through that? Or is there a way to sort of, I guess, market yourself or try and identify characteristics in your own ability that might qualify or appeal, or at least get you the interview? And then, maybe you can do the rest from there.
Absolutely. Okay. So 3-step process here for people who are making pivots. The first step is you need to look at financial runway. So if you were to, if you're unemployed, especially, what does your financial runway look like? Is it 3 months of cushion? Is it 6? Is it 12? And understanding kind of your financial constraints, because unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, we live in a capitalistic society. We need to be able to pay for your bills. So we always have to look at financial runway first. If you have a short financial runway, it probably will not behoove you to make a career pivot at this point. And so what we work with people on is, how do you get into a role that is perhaps akin to the one that you just left if you're unemployed and you have a short runway? And then how do you pivot once you're there? And so we give people strategies on how to pivot once they're in that company, and can shorten the amount of time that they're not on payroll. The second is that if you have a long runway, so say you're employed and you want to make a pivot, so you're getting the income, but you want to make a change, it's a lot easier to do this because technically it takes a little bit longer of a time. If you look at statistics on career changers, it's usually like 6 to 12 months to make a pivot versus like 4 to 6 if you're going to an akin role. And we help people tell their story in a different way. So let's say you're going from a product manager to like a UX designer or something like that. There are things that you're doing as a product manager that are doing things like a UX designer. And so sometimes take this example, for instance, like building a portfolio. Sometimes it's going to a boot camp and building your skills around a certain methodology in UX. Sometimes it's doing a hack a quarter or a hack a month at your current job, doing UX things so that you have more accolades and value that you're able to talk about on your resume in that vein. So you're still doing your job as a product manager, but doing some things as a UX person. So that's the second piece. And the third piece is doing things like for free to get experience. Great places to do that would be like at nonprofits, at like a friend or family member's company, and to kind of like do things on the side to show that you have that expertise, and not only that you've done the thing, but you've gotten results. And so a lot of times what people don't understand is that, you know, as a hiring manager, I want to know that you can do the job. Most times, sometimes I'll take a left something out of left field and be willing to invest and teach somebody. But most of the time, hiring managers want to hire people who've done the job. And so you have to be able to show that. So those are 3 ways that you can do so.
So that's your role at Facebook and HR. You probably interviewed a wide variety of job applicants, from software developers to designers to marketers, to just wide varieties. Is there any key interview, is there any advice that you could give someone who's going through the interview process to stand out, that really stand out to you? Like, is it a follow-up email? Is it certain questions they ask? Is it, the way they format their resume, their portfolio? It's probably a combination of all of the above, but there might be 1 or 2 nuggets that you could throw in there that people have done that just stood out to you.
Absolutely. So you're right. It is a combination of all of those things. But the 2 areas I'd say that people trip up the most on is they don't prepare before the interview. They think they can walk in and wing it. And we have clients all the time who come to us. They've been unemployed or looking for a year, and they made it to final rounds, and they have not gotten the ring or the offer. It's mostly because people don't know, they're not preparing, but B, they don't know how to tell stories in the right way. Mm-hmm. And you think of an interview, it's storytelling. It's talking about the David and Goliath story, about the different things that you encountered in your role, how you conquered challenges, and the results thereof by you conquering the dragon or slaying the dragon. And a lot of people struggle storytelling, but they also struggle to talk about themselves in a specialist point of view and really sealing the deal. And I'll tell a story for even the little things that get in the way, which is when I was in a recruiting role about 10, 15 years ago. I was working with a hiring manager, and the hiring manager had 2 finalists that we had presented to them, and they were torn. They were like, we don't know how to make a decision. They're so great. AJ, what would you do? And as soon as they said that, they got a ping on their email, and it was somebody who had sent a thank you note first. Mm-hmm. And so guess who they chose? Because they couldn't pick. They chose the person who sent the thank you note first. And so I tell people all the time, it's a combination of all these things. And it can be as little as like being the fastest person to send a thank you note because they're torn between 2 candidates. And so that was the thing that tipped the scale.
No, that's a great example. I mean, I think anytime you're talking about, trying to find a position, I have a son that's trying to be recruited for college football, and I was trying to explain to him that, basically what you're doing is a job. You're asking your coach to give you $100,000 education for free, right? I mean, you're not thinking about it in terms of like a paycheck, but it's a big expense that, somebody's paying for this. And so, I've just encouraged him, make sure you're reaching out to coaches, make sure you're sending emails, you're following up, you're, checking in, periodically, things like that, like getting on the radar, right? And I think as that pertains to job hunting, it's not like, hey, I want to go work for Apple and be an executive at Apple today. It's like, okay, well, for the next 9 months, I'm going to be, liking their LinkedIn stories, or I'm going to choose a couple executives to follow around and learn from their experience. I'm going to build a real life relationship with these people. Mm-hmm. And then when the time comes or an opportunity presents itself, then I'm in a position to give something a little extra, right? I can say, oh, well, you wrote that article some time ago, or, I've been studying this thing that you were doing, or, I loved what you did with X, or, whatever it is. And it just gives you that little extra something, right? And it could be a thank you note, it could be whatever else. But I think the goal is, or the moral of the story is, that it's all about relationships, really. And we develop a close relationship, or a quick relationship, I should say, like with an interview. It really is. I don't know. Obviously, some skill is involved, or, you need to be competent to do the job. But I think, and maybe I'm overgeneralizing, but it seems to me like a big part of it, though, is, can I stand to work with you? Are you going to be a good person for, a good fit here? And so I think that that's a big chunk that maybe we under appreciate. It's funny, just, tying this back to my kid's football thing. So he's a big New York Giants fan, and they got a season of Hard Knocks on Max running right now. So they just had their second episode. And some of the coaches were talking about a guy, they're at the college combine, and they're trying to, pick a couple new players or whatever. And the conversation they were having was like, oh yeah, he's the sweetest guy. He loves his family, he takes care of all these people. Oh, and this guy's kind of a dick, and he's, whatever. And it was like, and they picked the guy that was the better fit. Right. And my son goes to me and he's like, why would they care? Like, I mean, we need the best athletes. I mean, you're looking for the best guy. And I was like, well, the problem is if you bring in a poison dude and he comes into your locker room and he sucks and people hate being around him and all that stuff, it's like, that's going to be bad for team morale. Like, you might be the best player on the world, but I mean, short of like a Michael Jordan level talent, like if you're intolerable, people will just take the next best guy. And so I mean, to long retort here, but the whole idea is just, I think you're right that it's about building relationships and about, doing the best you can in the short period. And just something as simple as a gesture, like sending a thank you, can really go a long way in sort of establishing your character or the kind of person you are.
Absolutely. And the maybe like sub point to this is your resume is the thing that gets you a ticket to the interview. So you have to be able to prove that you can do the job, that you've done it before, that you have the results. And the interview is like, can I stand to work with you? Do I like you? Or do we have a good rapport? Is there a good ping pong here to our questions? Are you answering things honestly, right? Like, so the trust factor is getting built via a relationship in the interview itself. So, yep, 1000% agree with you.
It's funny. I reached out to you on LinkedIn to come onto this show a long time ago, and I don't even know how I came across your profile, but I do this a lot where I'll find someone that's intriguing or a expert in a field that I want to go down. We've gone down and we've interviewed a bunch of audio engineers, like the audio engineer for Iron Maiden and Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars and all these guys. Reached out through LinkedIn, and what I'll usually do is I'll send a quick message saying, hey, I like what you do. I just wanted to connect so I can follow your work. And then every time I see something, I'll like it, or I'll comment on a post, and start trying to build a rapport. And actually tomorrow I'm taking a online class with the guy that records all the NPR Tiny Desk series, and he's doing a field recording class. And I've been working this guy for a long time, trying to get him on the show. And I dropped $80 to take this online class just to try and build that rapport with him a little more. And hopefully one of these days he'll be on the show. But stuff like that, just actually having the back and forth instead of the cold email, like, hey, I like what you're doing, come on our show, or straight to the point where you're trying to sell right out the door. That's an instant red flag for me. And when people do that to me, I just don't reply. And if they do it again, I don't reply. And if they do it a third time, I block their account, because it's not a mutual thing here. People that actually are interested in what I do ask me about it and try and build that rapport. I'm an open book, but if you're just a sales pitch, I don't want anything to do with you.
Yep. So. Yep. That's such a good point, Mike. And I think the piece on like flattery is like the thing I guess I want to emphasize about what you just said, which is like flattery gets you a long way, and people may not like emote the way that you want them to when you're like physically on the front, when you're giving them a piece of flattery like that or a compliment, but on the inside, it's a totally different understanding, a totally different feeling, and it gets you places. And so, yes, to everyone listening, flattery will get you places. I'm genuine, of course. You don't want to be fake, but flattery.
Well, and that's the thing, right? I mean, flattery can come from a natural place or an honest place, right? I mean, like if you're open to it and you've got the personality, and this is obviously going to be a characteristic that people would look for in a potential employee. I mean, if you tend to just be a person who carries yourself in a way that's kind of thoughtful, kind of kind, like whatever, it's pretty easy to compliment somebody or to be nice. And it doesn't have to come off smelling like something fake or like you're just trying to get this job out of me. I think it's pretty easy to be authentic. It actually probably takes a little bit more work to fake it. And if you're faking it, you might even want to ask yourself, what are you doing in this interview? Like maybe this isn't the one for you.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Like I can't tell you how many times I get messages in my inbox that are like, hey, AJ, do you have any coaching jobs available? Or like, AJ, do you have any accounting jobs available? And I'm like, I'm not a recruiter, so no. And you clearly haven't looked at my stuff, versus a message that comes to me and says, like, hey, AJ, I saw you on this podcast, or I saw you on Fox last week, and I really loved what you said about blah, blah, blah. And I just love to keep in touch. I am way more likely to accept something like that because they've done the research and I know that like they are being genuine about it versus someone who's like reaching out for trying to get something from me,
Yeah. Instant red flag for me.
Yeah.
You mentioned that the resume is the gatekeeper. It opens the door. And the portfolio is part of that as well, I'm sure. As a recruiter, these days, it almost seems like your resume is processed by like an AI bot first to get through that first door, and then it gets in someone's actual hands. Is that accurate? Is there a way you can format your resume to get past that first virtual gatekeeper?
Yes. So half truths there. So every decision that's made, well, I shouldn't say every. I'd say like 80% of all decisions that are made in the recruitment process are done by a human. There are several things that you could be what's called auto screened out, and those are things like number of years of experience, your salary requirements, your location. If you need visa sponsorship or not, like those things sometimes can be set up in an applicant tracking system if they answer the quote unquote wrong way to be what's called an auto reject. But aside from those things, you are likely going to be either moved forward or rejected by an actual human. So the way in which to move through the gatekeepers, if you will, is to one, make sure that you have a results oriented resume. So how are you talking quantifiably about the achievements that you've done? Not just the duties, not just like the things that you covered, but like because you did X, Y happened, right? And Y being the quantifiable thing. So increased by 100%, or we grew the team by 200 people, or we brought $200 million to the bottom line, whatever that is. Like those are examples of quantifiable metrics. That gets you at what we call an interest peak. And so you want to pique the interest of the human that's looking at your resume so that they give you a call. So that's one way. The other way is, especially if you're making a pivot, instead of talking about your experience like under each of your roles, whether the company, the title, the dates, blah, 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 and each of the things, using what's called a functional resume. So if you don't know what that is, go Google it. But a functional resume helps you break down what you're doing by like orientation or a topic, and that's a way to kind of help a reader understand without talking to you what you've been doing, why you did it, and the results therein.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And the other thing I would just add, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about a moment ago, is just like every job I've ever had, my entire career has come by virtue of somebody I knew working somewhere, and a relationship that I built and that kind of thing, right? And so even today, I mean, in my own business, I've been out on my own for nearly 20 years now, and dipping in and out of places and things like that, but generally on my own, or largely on my own, for 20 years. We still get people who are former people I worked with in the agency, or I get a referral from somebody I worked with once, or I get a, whatever it is, but they all come that way. It's not there isn't or at least in my experience, like submitting resumes has not worked for me yet. Maybe one day, and maybe I'm making all the mistakes, but, but in my situation, almost everything has come by virtue of the relationships I've built. And so I would say, and this was my advice to a bunch of young like UX designers that I was talking to. I was in a forum on LinkedIn, and there are all these people complaining that they're putting in, 100 resumes, 200 resumes, 300 resumes, all this stuff, and they're not getting anything. And, I understand that's very frustrating and very challenging because it feels like you're doing work, right? It feels like I've done a lot of work. I mean, I've made 300 resumes, and in the very limited job resume stuff I've done, I mean, I get very frustrated with some of these resumes that are trying to make you jump through hoops a little bit. And I understand why they're doing it, but at the same time, from the perspective of I'm just filling out a million resumes, it's very frustrating when they're asking, well, if you were the captain of a pirate ship and you guys came out upon an island, what are you going to do? It's like, so I mean, it's like, okay, yeah, I get you're having fun. Yeah. But I think this goes back to a bigger point, which is you don't need to submit 300 resumes. You need to identify 10 companies that you actually give a damn about and try and find your way into those companies, right? So learn everything about the corporate culture. Go nuts on your pirate ship paragraph. Let them know how amazing a pirate you would be. And, all that kind of thing, because it's like filling out those stock resumes. I mean, if ATS is going to screen anything out, it's that stuff. It's these really generic resumes where I'm a UX designer right out of college. I have a stock resume that I built using a Word template, and I'm sending this around to the 200 employers. Like, most people are just never even going to see it. And so
I saw a LinkedIn post the other day where an HR guy was talking about how with Chat GPT and everything, everyone's sending in these Chat GPT cover letters or quick responses, and people are going to the point where they're not even like, they're just copy and pasting it, and they'll get the top little snippets from Chat GPT saying it was generated by Chat. Here's a response to your answer. And then that's actually getting sent in on the cover letter. And it's stuff like that, instant, nope, you're out of here, so
yes.
Sorry to interrupt, Ryan.
Oh, no, you're right. But I mean, it's my point, right? I guess is basically, I'm a little long-winded, so forgive me. But I mean, like the point here really is just like, if you don't care, don't bother, right? It shouldn't just be about getting a check or duping some employer into hiring you or whatever. Like, especially if you want to find any kind of happiness in the position you take, or if you really want to pursue some career goal or something, like, you should probably be somewhat invested in the place you're trying to work. I mean, all the big stories you hear are, they try again, right? I mean, they, rejected by Apple. Then I finally got my foot in the door, and it's like, oh, okay, well, now I'm in, but it's like, but if they'd have just not gave a damn, if it was Apple and Dell and everybody else, and they just went to every computer company with the same resume, pretty tough to, I guess, do a great job as an applicant if you're, not that interested, really.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, you Ryan, the thing about like what you mentioned about you getting a job through people and not through like an application, I completely relate to. That's exactly how I've gotten all my roles. In fact, CNBC just ran a study in the last 8 months that 80% of people who got hired in the last calendar year were hired because they were referred or like given an introduction to somebody at the company. So that means only 20% of the time are you going to land a role that you are applying to via a job board or online. So yes, relationships are 1000% key. And Mike, your thing on AI, what's happening with applicant tracking systems and the roadmaps of like building these applicant tracking systems is they're building in AI detectors to say like, hey, what's the likelihood that this was built by AI, this resume or this cover letter or what have you, and likelihood not. And so what we tell our clients, and I'll tell all of your listeners, is do not use all AI. You can absolutely use it. It's a wonderful tool to get ideas about how to talk about your experience, but do not copy and paste it and put it in any of your materials, because it's going to the point where ATS systems are going to be like, oh, flag for AI, this is not correct. And so brainstorm with AI. It's a wonderful tool, but do not copy and paste.
Well, yeah, it's a great point. I mean, especially if, a lot of people are using, like, let's just use ChatGPT as an example. I mean, he maybe will, get past this technologically, but I mean, like, even I can read ChatGPT and it has kind of a tone,
totally.
Right? And if everybody's using the same model, right? So we're all on ChatGPT 4.0 or whatever it is now. Yeah. And, I mean, everybody sounds kind of like ChatGPT. It's like, I mean, it's great. It's amazing. It's leaps and bounds in technology. But at the same time, it's like, well, yeah, but everybody's using it. So it just sounds like everybody,
Yes.
Yeah.
And no. Anyway,
the vernacular, the tonality, like it's very detectable now. Maybe in the future it won't be, but you're right. Like same thing, like when, obviously clients are writing stuff about, writing back to us as a coaching follow-up, or like writing a thank you note back to a interviewer, and they're sending us like, hey, can you look this? I can tell like almost instantly if it's AI generated or if it's from their heart.
Yeah. It's funny. It's one of those things that I don't think people factor in, which is, especially if I've had an interview with you, I know how you speak, which probably has at least some similarities to the way that you write, because this is how we do it generally. We kind of write the way we speak. And so if you said, if I speak to you and it's, very casual language and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden I get this hyper formal letter using giant words or whatever, like I'm going to go, this doesn't sound quite right to me. And so, exactly. I mean, so it's funny, there's just some like giveaways and, and back to the notion of, actually giving a damn about the places you want to go to work. I mean, if you're just going to do ChatGPT, it's like, how into it are you really? You know, like it's kind of maybe not the place you should be focusing your energy. You're not going to be a great fit for them. You're not going to be a good employee. And ultimately you end up kind of wasting everybody's time.
Exactly. And you, like, again, use AI to brainstorm things that you want to say, or like maybe an eloquent way of putting a sentence together, but copying and pasting is a no-go.
Yeah. I've used ChatGPT for multiple things, for writing song lyrics and getting an idea for that to kind of change it. And then my favorite use case for ChatGPT was a cease and assist letter for someone who was using my logo in a YouTube channel that they shouldn't be. And so I had it write a cease and assist letter to sound like a lawyer, and it sure sounded like a lawyer, and they took it down. So it works. So there's a use case for it, but you don't send a copy and paste cover letter. You need to go through and edit it, make it sound like you, and make it sound like a human being and not a LLM.
Yeah. So. Well, and that's the thing. I think that really is the point, right? I mean, even with all the things we've discussed so far today, it's like, it really is the human piece of being human that's important, right? It's not, I mean, yeah, you can fill out the resume, but it's probably more about how you come off in the interview. You know, are you a good person? Are you, you know, whatever we're basing it on, right? There's all these different factors, but like inauthenticity stinks, and almost everybody can pick it up. And you might get away with it a little now or here or there or whatever, but largely, if you're being inauthentic, you know, using authenticity as to mean, you know, being truthful or honest or representing yourself in an honest way, then, you know, you're going to be just fine. I mean, so you don't need to, you know, try and do all this cheating and all this stuff, because it's just like, I don't know. I think there's always going to be a place for just like humans being humans, you know, like even with the tech.
Totally. Yes. And going back to the small things, right? Like the thank you versus the person who didn't, like if you had 2 thank you notes or a piece of communication and one of them you was kind of like, I think this is AI. One of them's not. It could be a deciding factor. So you just never know.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's
all the small things.
That's right.
Speaking of small things, how important is a polished LinkedIn profile?
So important. Incredibly important.
What things are you looking at? Are you looking at like engagement with other people in the industry? Are you looking at how it's laid out? What are the key factors in a LinkedIn profile that stand out to you?
Yeah. So the first has nothing to really do with the human eye. It just has to do with showing up in the algorithms. You have to be able to like pick the algorithm has to be able to pick up on the amount of keywords that are associated with the role that you're going after, which is also why being a specialist versus a generalist is really important, right? Because you have stuff that talks about sales and customer success and talks about marketing. Like you're not populating enough on the algorithm because your net is too wide. And so being really specific, that specialist piece is really important. So then you have like all of the keywords and the niches that you have to have in order to show up on a search, right? Because as recruiters are looking for people, the algorithm dictates where you show up on their search results. So the first thing is that. The second piece is a lot of times we see people not update their LinkedIn profile. So it's like super outdated, or it just lists the companies. It doesn't talk about their achievements like you would on a resume. That absolutely should be there. In your about section, you're not pulling your highlights and the things that you're most proud of there, so that help bring the reader down your profile. It's basically like a sales page, if you think about it. And then the last thing that I'll mention is your headline. Your headline is so important. It actually is like one of the most indicative things of showing up higher on the algorithm, is like what keywords are in your headline. Yes, but also like what is it that you do? Not just like director HR Facebook, but like what's your most proud achievement? Like I help teams like double in size in 12 months, or whatever your most proud achievement is, and putting that in your headline too. It's very, very valuable real estate.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I didn't realize how important that was in just the algorithm section of it, like the keywords. And is the headline the most critical portion to actually say, I'm a front-end developer focusing on JavaScript, Next.js, Node, whatever, MERN stack? Is that supposed to be in your headline, or is that supposed to be in your summary?
Both. So the way that algorithms work is they look for repetitive keywords, so the amount of times that you're using same things or akin keywords. And so in your question, at least in this case, it would be both. So you want to list those things in your headline, but you also want to talk about them more in your summary, and then also underneath each of your roles.
Okay.
Perfect. I wanted to ask you, and maybe this is a weird question, because I imagine most people come to you looking to jump ship or maybe move to a new company or maybe even choose a new career path altogether. But I wonder if you have any advice for people who maybe they're in the right job, but they're not getting what they want out of it because they're burnt out or they've lost track of, maybe they're what got them there in the first place, right? So maybe it's not that they really need to go somewhere, but they've lost for whatever reason that juice. And we talk a lot sort of like in the general zeitgeist about finding our passions and chasing our passions and doing all these kinds of things. And I think a lot of people dismiss that stuff out of hand. But I wonder too, if there are techniques or ways of sort of getting our passion back, like if we really are in the right spot, but we've kind of lost that spark. Absolutely.
So there's a model that I use to talk about this, and it simplifies this into 2 levers that you can pull. So if you're finding yourself that you're not happy, maybe you're not growing, you don't like your manager, whatever the case may be, think about these 2 levers. So the 2 levers are, there's what we do. So product manager, UX, UI, whatever, it's the what we do. And then there's where we do it. So the where we do it is your manager, the industry, the size of company, all the things that come just with the company or the industry that you're in. And so a lot of times when we're talking to people about like, oh, I'm just so unhappy, I don't get it, I would say 7 times out of 10, it's they love the what, they don't like the where. And so they're having to pull that lever. So then it's okay, how do you come up with a list of criteria of things that you do want? And maybe that could be derived from things that you don't like right now at your current company. But how do you come up with that, what we call a good options rubric that talks about the things that you do want? And so the what isn't changing, but the where is changing. And then sometimes, right, 3 out of 10 times, it's the what. And so then it becomes some of those other things that we talked about in terms of looking back into your history, your accolades, your childhood, and looking at those patterns. And so I encourage you just to think about, like, especially if you're stuck, if you were to change the where, but you were doing the same stuff. So if you're maybe like, I don't know, you're working at a hedge fund and you're like, as a financial person, but like, I love dogs, right? And so maybe it's like, I want to go work in the pet industry. So if you were doing the same things, but in the pet industry, what different feelings does that bring up?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Yeah, I think it just kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier about, sometimes we get caught up kind of in that FOMO thing, right? We're looking at other people who seem to be having all that fun, or maybe that grass is greener kind of thing. Yeah. And I think sometimes we make ourselves unhappy, even if there's really not something wrong. So, so I think those are good ideas.
Yeah. The what and where made me think of Simon Sinek's Start With Why. Like get your dart centered and then go from there. Yep. So if you haven't heard that, it's a quick 5-minute little video on YouTube, and it's got billions of views just because it's very good advice. So go look that up. Simon Sinek, Start With Why, and it's a short little talk. It's great. We're kind of at that time where we usually try to keep these around an hour. Do you want to tell people where they can find you, how they can reach out and look you up?
Absolutely. So you can find me on all social platforms at AJ Mizes, Mizes. And then if you are interested in some career work, you can visit us at training.thehumanreach.com.
Cool. Love it. Well, thank you so much, AJ. This has been awesome.
Likewise, Ryan, Mike, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And thanks so much to everybody who tunes into the show this week and every week. And we'll see you guys next time.